On this week's episode, we preview what's coming to theaters in the near future. It's your life for The Rock one more time, and our movie picks for the 2010s, or the last decade, or whatever you want to call it. All this and more for us pinball wizards, as we once again delve into the pop culture cosmos. The pop culture cosmos. And we're back once again with the pop culture cosmos. It's Gerald Glassford coming right at you here from the pop culture cosmos, the Lakers Fast Break, Game Source, and Inside Sports Fantasy Football. Thank you so much for listening to all of our great programs. But it wouldn't be a pop culture cosmos without my good friend. He's our pinball shark of Pop Culture Cosmos. You got to check out what he's doing today at popculturecosmos.wordpress.com. Also, his great show, Topicocalypse, and his award-winning book, because I gave it the award. Congratulations, you suck. It is my good friend. It is Josh Peterson. What's up, man?
Do you know I'm always tempted to start the show off with it's just see like if you add on to it, or if that's so far aged now that nobody really cares or understands what it's a reference to.
It's from the 90s, man. You cannot do that. You cannot.
Hey, the 90s will live forever.
So you say. All I see is stuff written, mainly from the 80s that gets rebooted, man. That's all I'm saying. But it's going to be a great episode we've got for you today. The reason why we threw in the pinball stuff is because I've got not only one, not two, but three great interviews from CES 2020 from three great pinball vendors out there. Toy Shock, Ace Computers, and Stern Pinball. All three are going to be part of the show today. We've got great interviews lined up with all of them. Plus also as well, Josh and I are going to talk about an upcoming show based on The Rock's life, young life. But once again, it reminds us that The Rock's life is extremely popular. How popular will it be? We'll explore that issue, because if you remember from the 90s that Josh was talking about, it was Rock's life then. Is it Rock's life once again? We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that coming up later in the program. Plus also as well, we're going to talk about my picks and Josh's picks for the best films of the last decade, the 2010s, the previous decade, or whatever you want to call it, whatever they're calling it. I don't know. It's just the previous decade, the 2010s. Plus also as well, we've got a lot of other great things to talk about when it comes to what's coming up to theaters right now. So Josh, are you ready to hit it?
Oh, yeah.
We are going to go ahead and give you a little bit of a preview on what we think is good, not good, what's coming out here in the next few months. Actually, you know what? We'll go for this time as far as the preview up to the end of April. So before it gets into the really heavy-duty stuff coming out in May, we'll go ahead and preview some of the movies coming out from now until the end of April for you. So first off, this coming Friday, January 17th, the weekend of January 17th, got Bad Boys for Life, Doolittle. Those are the two big wide releases. And I said, Josh, that we're going to probably save a little bit of stuff that Josh, we're going to go ahead and save a little bit for Doolittle, because I really want to go into Robert Downey Jr. post Avengers on that. But I want to ask you real quick on Bad Boys for Life. Do you think there's anything left in the Bad Boys whole scenario? You really think it's good? You really think it's going to be something that audiences will go in or will get into the third time around?
I think a certain type of audience, yeah, the people who like grew up watching those movies. Even like the second one was 5 or 6 years spaced out from the first one. So now that they're hitting a sequel, almost 15 years later, since when did Michael Bay did that movie, right? And that last one came out when I was in high school, so it's been about correct. 12 years.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of a while. Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, it'll definitely, like, people who grew up thinking that those movies were the greatest things ever, I'm sure they're going to go watch it. But, you know, right now we're looking at Will Smith is not a very profitable actor, right? Look at Aladdin, you know, the people saying giving bad feedback about him in Aladdin, and then Gemini Man just completely tanked. And now
Well,
they're
Aladdin you can't say is bad because ultimately it ended up making a lot of money.
it did, but it's a Disney movie. It's Aladdin. If you look at like the critical response to Will Smith as a genie, though, it was not well received. And granted, he had those were big shoes to fill, but he's I don't know. Looking at how Gemini Man was received by people, I don't see Bad Boys 3 doing that well, and it'll hit a certain audience, I'm sure, and I feel like maybe it'll justify like the cost of the film, but I don't see it being anything that people come out going, wow, that was like a movie of 2020. Like that's in my top 10. I don't see that happening. Is it going to be good? Yeah, I'm sure it'll be good enough to be like a popcorn flick, but it's just I don't think it's going to do much in terms of like making people, captivating newer audience members and making them want to go back and watch 1 and 2.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think it's probably going to be something that has a little bit of nostalgia kicked into it, but I don't think it's going to go ahead and rekindle the fascination that we once had with whatever Will Smith was doing or whatever project Will Smith was part of. Coming up on the weekend of January 24th, we've got Run, The Turning, and also The Gentleman, with Guy Ritchie's film The Gentleman looking like, of the three, maybe The Turning as a horror movie because people want to go ahead and check out horror movies from time to time. But The Gentleman, Guy Ritchie's movie with a star-studded cast, to me looks like the movie that could be a little bit of a surprise coming up near the end of the month of January.
Yes, so this is one that I am actually really excited about because this is Guy Ritchie going back to doing what Guy Ritchie does best. And, I know we differ greatly on a certain Guy Ritchie movie that featured Charlie Hunnam, but Charlie Hunnam, like that is his niche, playing criminals. That's his niche. Like, look at what made him famous, right? Sons of Anarchy. That is his niche. Now he's like speaking in his natural accent. You can't go wrong with this, just you look at the other people on the cast, right? It has Colin Farrell's in it, and it's got a couple other people from some of the older Guy Ritchie films as well. So I'm just, maybe Jason Statham will show up because that's how Jason Statham got his start. But this is Guy Ritchie going back to his roots, like all the things that I love the guy, but I think that big budget films, big budget action films with set pieces featuring like, magic, like King Arthur or Aladdin, things like that. I don't think that that's him. These crime capers are what he does best. And I'm really excited about it because it's not attached to anything, right? It's just a standalone movie. So I think this could be a really fun popcorn flick for people who are just, looking to go see something on a rainy day.
Well, we've got at the end of the month, we've got Gretel and Hansel, which is supposed to be a fantasy horror type movie, and the Rhythm Section as the major releases coming out that weekend. The Rhythm Section with Jude Law in a supporting role may get some interest. I only just started seeing the trailers and commercials for it recently, so I'm not sure if it's going to get that word or buzz or, that type of, attention that maybe this film might deserve when it comes out later this month. February 7th, we've got Birds of Prey. That's the movie I think everybody seems to be pointing towards to after what's going on here with 1917. Birds of Prey seems to be the biggest release outside of what we're seeing with 1917 with Margot Robbie, obviously extending the DC universe even more. I mean, you and I are going to be talking about it in the coming weeks. We just saw the trailer. I see good things ahead for Birds of Prey. I know you do as well, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not seeing like fireworks as far as the film is concerned, but I do see this could be like another one to add on to what they've been doing correctly lately, especially since it's got, people. The best thing that came out of Suicide Squad was Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn, and that is the best place for them to start.
On the 14th of February, Valentine's Day, you got Downhill with Will Ferrell and Julia Louis-Dreyfus. That one we've seen some commercials on as far as a ski trip that really goes awry for both of them as a couple and the entire family. Fantasy Island, which we've talked about before on this podcast, moving into a horror genre. Not sure if that's going to hit with the audiences, but you know what? Hey, it's trying to, out of an old property, create a new niche for it. So we'll see what happens there. What about Love, which is a romance starring Andy Garcia, Sharon Stone? This looks like to be a collection of actors and actresses together. Whether or not that one's going to hit, we'll have to wait and see. But it is right around Valentine's Day, so that could be gaining off that type of audience. Also, as well, Ordinary Love with Liam Neeson, that might also hit. That might also hit as well. And Sonic the Hedgehog, that one, that one's been under a lot of scrutiny. Do you think it has anything for audiences after the controversy it created with Sonic looking so poorly before?
I think so, because this could be the movie that calls a butt ton of people out on the hypocrisy of the internet, right? You have all these people who complain, I don't like his eyes, I don't like his voice, I don't like his fur, his ears, or whatever it was. And then what would that say about people who complained about it and then don't go to see the movie? Especially since the director had the goodwill towards the fans to go through and fix all this stuff to be exactly how people want it to be. If people don't go see this movie, then really why do people do anything on the internet? Why does the internet exist? Like, this is a movie that is it going to be good? Probably not. But if it's, it's something that they did, they listened to you, they heard what you wanted, and they went out and did it. So people should go out and support. And if they don't, I fear what's going to be happening in the coming years for cinema.
I'm gonna just tell you right now, man, the bad buzz is all around with this film, and this is going to be a repeat of Cats. That's all I say. Results and all, I think. I'm sorry.
That's a heavy comment right there. Cats was just
people
awful.
Got freaked out the same way that Cats was with the initial trailer. Bad buzz just never. It never just. It always stayed with the Cats, and that turned out to be a bomb deluxe. And I think this is going to end up in the same fashion.
No, we'll see. I'm hopeful that it doesn't. I'm hopeful enough people go to see it to justify it and all the the difficult road that it went through. But we'll see, man. Come February, we'll be talking about it, I'm sure.
We'll be talking about it indeed. Coming up next, right after that, on the 21st of February, because we're going to go rapid fire on this. Brahms, The Boy 2, continuing that horror, continuing that series of the horror movies. The Call of the Wild with Harrison Ford and Karen Gillan. Also, as well, there's and Karen Gillan. Those are the two movies that are coming out on the weekend of February 21st. It seemed to me like those two maybe are not going to go ahead and really. I don't get much buzz from either of them, even though there's some big names involved. So I don't think there's going to be much success from those two films. On the 28th of February, you've got The Ride, also The Invisible Man, and got The Ride and The Invisible Man. Man, I'm just telling you right now, speaking of man, I just don't see anything that's really jumping out at me as far as a hit movie is concerned. Hopefully, as we get closer to these release dates and maybe a lot more footage is shown for some of these films, maybe we can get a better vibe from it. But right now, I don't see anything really from the latter half of February that I think is going to hit with audiences. In March the 6th, the weekend of March 6th, you've got Onward. That's the Pixar movie with Chris Pratt and Tom Holland. I think this movie might get some good buzz, and I think this movie does have some hope as far as an original IP and original idea from Pixar. What do you think on that one?
No, I agree. It's got the star power behind it. It's got the trailers have been really funny, and I'm sure once it gets closer to release, we'll be seeing a lot more marketing for it, especially at Disneyland, because they always have to market those Disney film stuffed animals, T-shirts, things like that. So I'm seeing good things for Onward.
As am I, my friend. As am I. The other wide release is from A24, and that's First Cow. And I think it's going to be notable because I might be one of the last, if not the last, performance of Renee Auberjonois, who we know from Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, and all that. So I think that's probably one of the main reasons why it gets released. That's one of the main reasons why it might garner some interest. And also The Way Back with Ben Affleck. Just, I don't know. It's a sports movie. I'm not sure if it's really going to get an audience that is hoped for, but March the 6th, we'll see what comes out, because going to be just after the buzz from the Super Bowl, so we'll see what happens there. In April, and that's where we're going to hit to next, because that's when we're going to start really seeing, after the, I guess, the interest in Birds of Prey dies off, we're going to see on April the 3rd, that weekend, The New Mutants, Peter Rabbit 2, The Runway, The Lovebirds, and Saint Maud. Of those four, I might say The New Mutants, because that's the one that's been heavily scrutinized. Had parts of it were redone. You know, the Disney Fox merger really put a kink into that movie schedule. They moved it to another weekend because of it. Your thoughts on The New Mutants, real quick?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to expect from it. I don't know. I haven't really watched a lot of the trailers. You know, I know that I saw the first one. I know it's supposed to be a slash horror film. I also know that they've had to delete some tweets this weekend regarding its place in the MCU, and if it is a part of the MCU. You know, that might be another like Amy Pascal comment. You know, she's talking to Kevin Feige and he shakes his head on camera. But no, I mean, I'm hopeful for it. You know, this is either going to be the beginning of mutants in the MCU or the end of the last X-Men franchise. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I'm hopeful that's okay. I do want to go see it. I haven't seen Dark Phoenix. Don't really care to, but this is something I am kind of interested in just because of its history.
Right after that, we've got probably the best movie that's going to do well, the biggest favorite to do well in the month of April, and that's the last James Bond movie with Daniel Craig, No Time to Die. And you and I will be going over this probably in the coming months as to. We think it's looking really good, and we're both very interested in seeing it. On April 17th, on the weekend of April 17th, you've got Charm City Kings, and I think people are just still going to be interested in what's going on with No Time to Die that came out the weekend before. You also have Antlers, the horror movie Antlers, and Monster Problems, which are also going wide on the weekend of the 17th. But again, unless I see more from them as far as what's come from those two movies, I don't have very much faith in them supplanting the James Bond movie No Time to Die, at least at that point in time in the schedule. And then the last weekend of April 24th, you've got Bad Trip, Antebellum, and Fatima. I'm going to ask you this when it comes to those wide releases, also the ones I mentioned previously, going all the way back to the 10th. Could it be a situation until Black Widow comes out scheduled to be, could it be a situation where Black Widow, which is scheduled to come out on May the 1st, where No Time to Die is the reigning champ 3 weeks in a row?
One can only hope, right? Unless it gets the reviews of Quantum of Solace, which weren't exactly, a piece of solace for the 007 franchise. I'm hopeful, yes. How long will it stay on top? I guess that's a whole other thing. But then again, like you said, there's not a lot of movies coming out in that small release window. So I'm actually really curious to see how it stacks up when Black Widow comes out. Because that'll be the first Marvel film to come out, Spider-Man, but like the first post Spider-Man film, or second post Avengers film, and this is one that is pre-Avengers. So it's a weird timeline jump, but yeah, I'm curious to see how they stack up against each other. How is Black Widow even going to do?
Exactly. So, and then I do want to go, you're right, Josh. I did skip over, and I'll cut this in there. For March 13th, the weekend of March 13th, you have I Still Believe, and also Bloodshot with Vin Diesel, and My Spy, the movie that Dave Bautista made a long time ago, and it got pushed back into this year. I don't see much from My Spy. It looked horrible. It looked like something that they were trying to create with similar to Kindergarten Cop. But do you think Vin Diesel in something outside of the Fast and Furious movie can hit?
One can only hope, because this is, from what I understand, the next Riddick film is in production, and I'm curious, if Bloodshot does not do well, are people going to care about Riddick anymore? Especially within Vin Diesel and an original IP, is Hollywood going to touch him if this doesn't do well, right? Because he has Fast and Furious, he has Riddick, and that might just be the end of his career. He might just be trapped in those walls if this is not something people want to see. But even just watching the trailers, it's like, okay, so what's special about this film?
Exactly, my friend. So I'm not convinced Vin Diesel can have a hit outside the Fast and Furious, and of course whatever he's doing with Guardians of the Galaxy. But that's neither here nor there. So I don't see much from Bloodshot as far as hitting on with any audiences, because the next week you don't have very much. I Am Patrick, but then after that on the on the 20th. The 20th is actually the date that you really want to circle, because A Quiet Place Part 2, that one, there's a lot of expectations on it now. It was a big hit, a very big surprise hit when the first one came out. Now you get to see what happened on the day one of the actual infestation of the aliens. The trailer came out for it and was really impressive. So A Quiet Place Part 2 on the 20th, that could go ahead and blow away My Spy, Bloodshot, or anything else at that point in time. What are your impressions on A Quiet Place Part 2?
Yes, I'm all in on this one. I really enjoyed A Quiet Place. It had so many elements that came out of nowhere and surprised me. Um, the big question here is, can a movie like that exist beyond one movie? And I can tell you that I have never been more curious about anything film related in my life.
There you go right there. And I think a lot of other people are going to be curious too when it comes to A Quiet Place Part 2 that comes out the weekend of March 20th of this year. And last but not least, on the 27th, Mulan, the live action Mulan, which has gotten a lot of good buzz and a lot of different buzz and a lot of bad buzz and a lot of controversy, all wrapped up into one since the trailer first came out. I still think it's going to do well at the box office. I think Disney's going to promote it. I do not think that it's going to do as well as some of its other live action brethren, like Aladdin or The Lion King or whatnot. But I still think it's going to do well above the other not so well performing live action remakes, such as Dumbo and Dumbo, Mary Poppins. I think it's going to do above that. I think it's going to do somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, this is interesting to me because this is the first like live action Disney movie that's trying to go beyond what the original Disney movie was. It's kind of removing itself from the tropes of the the song and dance style film, and it's actually taking itself seriously as a film, as a timepiece, as something set in a historical era with a lot of action. Like it's trying to be something in the vein of what it feels like to me, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and I'm fascinated by it. It doesn't. I'm sure in the soundtrack we'll see like the typical Mulan songs, but again, there's no like Mushu, there's no singing. I hope that her two buddies will be in there, but this looks to be something far beyond what we've ever seen before in a live action Disney film. So how will it do? What exactly is the film going to be like? We don't know, but I'm crazy curious about it, and I hope that it is good. Where will it fall in box office? It all depends. Like, I don't even have enough information to guess about that because it's such a different beast.
It is a different beast indeed, but there's still there's still some good movies I am really looking forward to in the first 4 months of the year. What movies are you looking forward to in the first 4 months of the year? Please let us know. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Also as well, Pop Culture Cosmos, Humanica Media, and Game Source on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. Well, coming up after the break, we've got a lot of great things to talk about because we're on the floor at CES with Gary Stern from Stern Pinball. We're going to go ahead and have a conversation with him on what's up, on what they just announced, some Stranger Things. A lot of great fun with that, and also a Star Wars pinball machine as well. This is the Pop Culture Cosmos. And we're back with the Pop Culture Cosmos. My friend, we talked about it before that we're going to go ahead and let everybody know our thoughts on the previous decade when it comes to the top films. So I want to hear your thoughts, man, on what your top films of the previous decade, the 2010s, whatever you want to call it. What are your top films of the 2010s?
Okay, so these are, the orders can probably be shifted around a little bit here, but I'll start at what I have listed at number 10, something that we have debated over a lot, and it was King Arthur. I'm a huge fan of Guy Ritchie. This is just a different, is a different take on the King Arthur story, and I loved I loved the editing more than anything else in the film. It wasn't, the story was, it was what it was, but I love the way that this movie was edited, and I think Charlie Hunnam did a pretty great job in it. So that's where I stand on that. Next one, I got Dunkirk. That was a surprisingly good movie. Like, I don't know what I was expecting from a Chris Nolan war film, but it was good. It was well done. Like, it seemed very respectful to the source material and the historical time it was set in. So I was pleasantly impressed with that. Me and my dad went to go see it. My dad doesn't like most movies, and he actually came out like impressed with this movie. This one and one other one I got on my list, which I'll get to in a minute. At number 8, I have Little Italy. This is a weird one for me. It has what's his name from Star Wars in it? Hayden Christensen. Hayden Christensen and Emma Roberts. Like, this was one that, like, it was my top film of the year last year, just because it's fun. It's easy to watch. It's not like, I guess you can call it's a mixture. It's like a romantic comedy, but like, it's one that actually, like, I don't know, I just felt really good watching it. I haven't like had that movie buzz for a long time, but this is one you can watch on Amazon Prime right now. It's an indie film, and it was actually really well done. Number 7, The Inbetweeners. So this is the movie that finished off the BBC series, The Inbetweeners. Really awkward. If you're jumping right into this instead of watching the series first, I got to be honest, it's probably one of the most awkward things you'll ever see in your life. But there's something about capturing that era of being a teenager when you're just out of high school trying to figure out what you want to do next with your life, and just all the shenanigans that, that turmoil, that tumultuous, I guess would be the word, tumultuous time of your life can lead to. Definitely check it out, though. It's a British comedy, so if that's your jam, then this would be a movie you'd want to look at. Inception. Where do you stand on Inception, man? As a Chris Nolan film, because I had to watch it 5 times before I saw the genius in it. What are your thoughts on it? I don't think we've ever talked about this.
Oh, we'll be talking about it here coming up after the break, or after the interview that we have coming up with Ace Pinball, because it's on my list too, but we'll save that for later.
Oh, dang. All right, cool. All right, next one I got Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows Part 2. Like, this was it was good. This was the end, much like Avengers Endgame. Like, this was the end of a pop culture movement. I think it was executed very well. I love the idea of splitting the last book into 2 films, because that kind of gave them really a lot of time to explore what these characters are, what they've been through, and where they're going, what they could be in the future. And just like the confrontation, it was, there are a few things missing from the books, but it was almost word for word pulled right off those pages. And I think David Yates did a great job with this. One could only hope that maybe that magic will return to the Fantastic Beasts franchise, but we'll see. Next one, I got Avengers Endgame. I know we talked about that last week. Certainly need to go back into why I love that movie so much. But again, end of a pop culture movement, right? And I guess you could say beginning of something new. But it was just very well done. They wrapped a bow up. They put a bow on everyone's storylines pretty well, and I enjoyed it. Number 3, 007 Skyfall. This was one that did get nominated for a bunch of awards. This was following Quantum of Solace, which didn't do well. Like, this was a really great return to form for that franchise, and the acting in it was just stellar. It was amazing. So definitely one of my top 5 007 films. Number 2 is another indie. It's called Tonight You're Mine. So it's about these indie rockers at this music festival in the UK. and they're fighting, and this preacher comes up and he handcuffs them together, so they have to go through their sets. Uh, at this music festival, they have to go to each of their sets and play together. So it's kind of an interesting film to see two people who hate each other eventually learn to like each other by the end of the night, despite the fact that they're in different music, different scenes. It's a interesting juxtaposition. Number one, I got Blade Runner 2049. I've talked this movie to death, and everyone should know why I love it so much, but it was amazing. The acting was awesome. Cinematography was awesome. The philosophical and theological themes behind the film were just fantastic and very well thought out. This was another one that me and my dad went to go see. My dad came out. He's like, that was probably one of the best movies I've seen in the past 5 years. And that's saying quite a bit. So that's my top 10. I'm sure I forgot some things somewhere along the line, but tell me about yours. What you got, man?
Well, I'm going to say that after our interview. Okay, I'll give my list, but I got 2 questions for you real quick. King Arthur, man, that movie blows. It blows bad. The year we were talking about it, it was on one of my worst lists. It was actually one of my worst films of that year and one of your best. So we have a very, the difference is like the continental divide as far as our opinions on that film. But I'm glad you enjoyed it. I've always said I'm glad you enjoyed it because I sure didn't.
Well, a lot of the films, it is actually not a fair position to be in. I was going to say a lot of the films that you like, I don't, but I haven't seen half of them. So that's a thing here. But no, again, the story was just whatever. What really drew me to this, I'm a cinema nerd. I like things that go beyond the stories. I like the editing and the acting and things like that. And for King Arthur, the story was not fantastic, but I loved watching the editing and the way the music all came together. There's a lot of technical things about it that I loved more than the story. So that's kind of where I stand on that.
There was a lot of technical things that I didn't like about that movie either. So let's just say it was some of the most blatant green screening I've ever seen in my life. Again, that's another argument for another day.
Okay. All right.
Okay. You like I said, you enjoyed it, and I'm so glad you did. And the number 2 thing is the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, because you mentioned in your deal as far as Avengers Endgame being high up. Although when we did our spoiler cast, you said Avengers Endgame was like number 4, number 3. So I don't know where the other 2 movies were on that list.
They were. So I honestly, man, they'd probably be on this list. I just was looking back to things that came out in the past couple of years. Avengers Endgame, I think it might not be my top Marvel film, but I think it's a very significant Marvel film. And, that's when I think about what defines the decade in terms of Marvel films, I think Avengers Endgame it's the end game of, that universe. I would say Iron Man is on there, but that's from not this decade. That's from 11 years ago. So it didn't quite make the list, but, I saw you have Winter Soldier on there. I think Winter Soldier was amazing. I just didn't think to put it on my list. So I think Avengers Endgame kind of encompasses everything relating to Marvel for me.
Well, fair enough. It's not as I like it. It's in my top 5, but it's at number 5 for me as far as the all-time MCU. So it didn't end up making my list. But my list will be announced pretty soon here. But first off, we're going to have an interview coming up right after the break from CES 2020 and Ace Pinball. I'll tell you what, they have done just a tremendous job as far as what they've presented with the pinball and bringing it to a new era. But they'll explain it better than I can because it's on the way. Our conversation with Ace Pinball right after the break. This is the Pop Culture Cosmos. And we're back with the Pop Culture Cosmos. Okay, Josh. So I'm now going to go ahead and tell you my list for the best movies of the decade. So let's go with it, and let's go with it right now. All right. I had to make a little tweak and a little last-minute change, and that was I'll give it as an honorary mention, but it's going to be somewhere eventually when I think about it more about where it would fall. But The Farewell, which was my number 1 movie of the year for 2019 that I saw, that's going to fit somewhere on this list, but I'm just not quite sure where. So I had to go ahead and make it an honorary mention because I made a last-minute tweak. But here we go. Number 10, Inception. Just truly a mind-bending film. just truly was an awe-inspiring experience. And I think of it as more of a revolutionary film than Avatar was at its time. To give you an idea, I think that movie is more important to cinema than Avatar, because I know everybody was talking about the effects of Avatar, but no, I think Inception was something even more special and a much better movie to boot. Number 9, let's go with The Social Network. I know you were surprised when I mentioned The Social Network. I really think it was something that I didn't have any expectations going in, but it came out of it going, wow, that was a great movie. Especially because Facebook was just going over that hump and becoming something even more dynamic than what a lot of people were even thinking about at that time. So I really have a nice place in my heart for The Social Network. Number 8 is Guardians of the Galaxy. So this is where my first entry on my list is for a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. And I really think this is just an outstanding film. Again, it's another film I went in there having zero expectations because I didn't know the Guardians of the Galaxy. You're the comic book guy. I'm not the comic book guy. So I went in there not even having any idea about the Guardians of the Galaxy. And I came out, wow, just overwhelmed about how good movie that was. Number 7, Avengers Infinity War. Infinity War was just truly a great movie, and I think it's the better of the two movies, not by a whole lot, but I still think it's a great movie nonetheless over Endgame. Endgame is still an outstanding picture, but that's just missed my list. Infinity War did make my list, especially because of the fact that the Russos were brave enough to go ahead and have that type of ending in the film, no matter what happens in Endgame. Yeah, they went ahead and corrected it and all that, but to have the cojones, to have the guts to go ahead and have that type of ending and to build it up the way it was structured, and the fact that there was really no gaps or pacing issues at all in the movie for such a extended film, I really enjoyed it. Number 6, Crazy Rich Asians, which was my number 1 movie of 2018. Went in there, I heard good things about it, but I didn't really expect very much. And I came out of there going, wow, once again. You're going to hear this from me on most of these films. It's just like, I didn't have these expectations, but I come out of the theater going, that was a great film. And that was something very unexpected and the best romantic comedy I've ever seen. Crazy Rich Asians at number 6. Number 5 is not a romantic comedy. In fact, well, you know what? You could even say that's a romantic comedy, but Deadpool. Deadpool was a movie that I thought was just going to be Ryan Reynolds just cursing and doing his shtick for the entire movie. And yes, it was, but it was his best ever performance at being Ryan Reynolds. I cannot believe how good that movie was to me. My wife and I were just laughing nonstop, and it was just a great time and is, to me, the best comedy of the 2010s. Skyfall is at number 4. Very well-made movie. Sam Mendes gets all the credit for it, and it's something that I truly enjoyed, and I know you enjoyed it too because it's on your list as well. Funny how that happens. We're having movies on the same list. Number 3, it's the best kung fu movie I've ever seen in my entire life, and that's The Raid Redemption. And that's with all the Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, and all the other great kung fu films that have been out there. Like them all, but The Raid Redemption is so much better. It is that much better, and I highly recommend it. Number 2, just barely missed on my list as far as being number 1, but it was our number 1 movie of 2017, and that is Blade Runner 2049. It's a movie that both you and I thought was the best movie of the year. It was something that not only as a visual feast, but it was something that, as far as it told a great narrative, and I highly recommend it to everybody out there. Yes, it may run a little long for some people, but then again, we're getting more and more used to 3-hour films, and I think this film deserved much more love than it got. And last but not least, the number 1 movie of the year, the number 1 movie of the decade for me was Captain America: The Winter Soldier. I've gone on and on several podcasts about how much I love this film, and it is on my top 25 films of all time, the highest from this past decade, and deservedly so, because you want a superhero flick, you want an action flick, you want a spy thriller, you got them all wrapped up into one great film. So there you go, my friend. There's my list. Sorry, no King Arthur to be found.
No, I am The Raid Redemption is one I still want to go back and watch. Social Network is all right. The Farewell, something I was curious about but never saw. It's a pretty solid list of movies here. I'm not going to rip your heart out over it like you did with King Arthur, but you know,
People should go back in time and for that original discussion on that film. That's something. That's something. That was gold.
This is like when the internet attacked me for Wonder Woman.
No, I think mine was better. I think that was better. I think you and I, if we had not been in different states, we would have come to blows over that.
Okay.
But that was the same year Blade Runner 2049 came out, and we were both in agreement of how good Blade Runner 2049 came out, and that's just something that I think we both agreed on. And Captain America: Winter Soldier, we both have a great affinity for. I know you've spoken about it. I know just it wasn't on your list, but I know if you had more time to think about it, it would fall somewhere on your list. And I know Captain America: Winter Soldier to a lot of people is the best MCU movie. So there you go. All right. Any last thoughts on our list?
Oh, no, I'm curious to see, what movies are going to be coming out in the next 10 years. Are we going to be having this conversation again the next 10 years? I'm excited to see what the future of cinema holds, especially with all these like streaming platforms and how the game's changing.
I am as well. I'm excited for it. There should be a lot more choices, and you never know. King Arthur 2 might be one of them. So what are your thoughts out there on the best movies for you for this past decade? Let us know. Send us your list. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. All right, before we head on out, we're going to go ahead and have another great interviews from CES. It's our friends at Toy Shock talking about their great line of pinball machines. They've got a lot of variations, got some machines that'll go ahead and play a lot of games into one. So you got to check out my interview today. So you got to check out my interview coming up with the folks at Toy Shock coming up right after the break. And then after that, we're going to talk about we're going to talk about The Rock. Is a young Rock a Rock worth watching? We're going to talk about that right after. We're going to talk about that to close out the show. This is the Pop Culture Cosmos. And we're back to close out the show. This is Pop Culture Cosmos. My friend, I'll tell you what, it's been a great episode. I cannot thank enough the folks at Ace Pinball, Toy Shock, and also as well, Gary Stern from Stern Pinball, competing today for everybody out there as far as the pinball is concerned. It was a great time at CES to not only see those three companies having their say as far as the future for the pinball industry, but also as well, Arcade 1UP from last weekend with their own virtual pinball setup coming up. So it's very interesting to see. I'll tell you what, whether you want a 3/4 inch version that you can get now at a low price like Toy Shock, or you want a more detailed version, the stand-up version, like if you want the latest Stranger Things pinball full-size version that Stern offers, or their Star Wars unit that they just offered, or any of the other full-size units, they're always a great option. But to me as well, Ace Pinball with their option where you can actually have the controllers, the 2 sets of controllers, 2 sets of 6 buttons, and also a full-size pinball machine with the changing display, with the fact that you can play arcade games and pinball games and be open sourced. That was truly an option I couldn't believe. It just blew my mind. And I'll tell you what, all those are great options, but you know what? That's some money I might be digging into for some pinball action right there for you. But before we head on out, go ahead.
Oh, how much are these machines? How much do they run for?
Well, the Stern and the Ace pinballs are not cheap. They run, into the thousands of dollars. But the Toy Shock version that plays a multitude of games as well, that one is a 3/4 inch size unit. That one you can find at Walmart for right around, or some of their titles you can find at Walmart for right around the $400 mark.
Okay, and how? Just out of curiosity, sorry, this is cool to me. How big are they? What were the cabinet sizes?
Well, the cabinet size of the Toy Shock, again, because it's Walmart, similar to what Arcade 1UP is. It's like a 3/4 inch version of the actual real life size. But the Ace Pinball version, that is a full size, heavy duty cabinet. with the fact that the back screen and also the front screen changes to whatever game that you're doing, because you can open source it. So you can have literally 8 to 10,000
Okay.
games in there. And whether you want to play Street Fighter with a friend right on the actual unit, because the joystick and the buttons are right on the unit, or you want to go ahead and play a pinball game from the past, like from the 50s, 60s, whatever, pops up right there on the screen and the whole display right there on the glass, and then also right there on the back panel as well. It's just it blew my mind. It just really was that great to see. But that one is also not cheap at all.
Yeah, I mean, most of these, unless it's made by At Games, you're not going to get like a a cheaper in price, pinball machine. But no,
Arcade One Up is going to have their own virtual pinball machine, and that will be competitively priced.
Oh, nice. Okay. Well, I mean, it's a lot of people want these full size arcade cabinets, full size pinball machines, but they don't know where to get them. That's so I just curious about the information on that.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll tell you what, thank you to all three of those companies for allowing me to interview them. And it's right there for you, whether you want stern.com, acecomputers.com, or find out from the folks at toyshock.com. They're going to be a lot of information right there for you on all of those great machines. And if you're really into pinball like we are, it's going to be a lot of fun for you down the road if you get one of those machines. So before we head on out, my friend, I want to go ahead and close with this. The Rock has been approached and accepted a offer from NBC to go ahead and develop a show based on his life at a younger age. This is not the first time there's been a This Is Your Life on The Rock. This one actually is going to be an NBC series, but back in the WWE in the Attitude Era in 1999, This Is Your Life, a segment that he did, it was a kind of a joke segment with Mick Foley, turned out to be one of the highest rated segments ever in cable history for the WWE. So I ask you, my friend, is a version of This Is Your Life with The Rock going to be as interesting as a series a second time around?
Not if it's called This Is Your Life with The Rock. If it was called This Is Your Life on The Rock,
it's going to be something like a young Rock or something like that.
Okay, I just made a pun though. I don't know if you got that.
I blew it. Sorry, Mr. Pun.
The timing was so perfect. Okay, here's my thoughts on this. The Rock, super interesting. Would love to see a documentary on his life, but I don't think I could get behind a show. Multiple episodes. It's one of those things. Like when you watch a documentary on homelessness or whatever, you sit there, you watch it, this is interesting, I sympathize, I empathize, whatever kind of human being you are, and then you turn it off and you're like, oh, okay, I don't really need to watch that again. That's how I feel this show would be. If it was like a 2-hour documentary one time through, yeah, I'd totally be interested in it. But having a series with like multiple episodes, I don't think so. It's something I'd want to like sit down and watch over and over again.
Well, I'll tell you what, my friend, whether you like it or not, the bottom line is it's going to happen with The Rock.
Is there going to be cooking in this show? Is it, will it have a segment called Do You Smell What The Rock Is Cooking?
I'm sure they will at some point. I'm sure they will.
All right. I'm in then.
There you go. So what do you think out there about The Rock having a show based on his life at an earlier age? A young Rock, as it were. Share us your thoughts, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Well, my friend, it's been a great episode. My friend, it's been a great episode. On the Friday show, PCC Multiverse, you and I are going to be talking about Robert Downey Jr. and Doolittle, because that comes out this weekend. And we want to really get into depth about that, because this is his first movie post-Avengers. So I know you and I are going to share some thoughts on that, about his future in the movie industry, and if he's going to have that same kind of panache and the same kind of cachet going forward with audiences. Plus also we're going to be talking some good stuff with Jessica Boggs and some more great CES interviews as well. Josh, any last thoughts on the way out?
So I would actually love, to be able to talk about Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order one of these nights, because I am playing that game, and I feel silly for ever doubting it. It's an amazing game. But yeah, I'll have some thoughts on that when I'm done, probably in the next couple of weeks. So yeah.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on them. I don't think we were ever doubting the game. I think we were just doubting the company that was making the game. I think that was the situation there. I still think they put themselves in I still think they shot themselves in the foot based off the way they last minute sent out the copies for reviews. That I didn't think was in their best interest. But you know what? They've been able to overcome that with continuous marketing that we see even to this day, which most November releases don't get. So you know what? They're making up for lost ground, and hopefully it's helping them out at retail. So for Josh Peterson, this is Gerald Glassford. It's another beautiful day in paradise right here in the Pop Culture Cosmos. We thank you for listening. And we also thank you for watching as well. And here's hoping you have yourself a great